What happens when love transcends species, but family loyalty demands blood? When Zara Kethvar, daughter of the most powerful Vorthak merchant dynasty, chose Marcus Chun over her arranged betrothal to unite two alien empires, she thought the worst consequence would be exile. She was wrong. 3 years have passed since she fled her homeworld with the human she loved, building a new life among the stars. But the Vorthak have long memories, and debts, especially those of honor, must always be paid. When her younger sister arrives at their remote trading post with news of their father's death, and an ultimatum that could shatter the fragile peace between dozens of worlds, Zara discovers that some choices echo across galaxies. The humans call it humanity first, humanity forever. But what happens when choosing humanity means abandoning everything else you've ever known? And what price is too high to pay for love that crosses the void between worlds? In a universe where political marriages seal alliances and broken promises start wars, two hearts that beat for each other across species lines are about to learn that the greatest battles aren't always fought with weapons. Sometimes they're fought with sacrifice, and the victory belongs to whoever is willing to lose everything to save what matters most. The warning sensors on Kepler Station screamed their electronic distress, just as Zara Kethvar was teaching her human husband how to properly brew Vorthak tea. The bitter, purple liquid required precise timing and temperature control that most humans found impossible to master, but Marcus Chun had the patience of someone who had learned to love across species lines. His calloused fingers, scarred from years of ship repairs and stellar engineering, moved carefully around the delicate ceremonial cups that had been among the few possessions Zara had carried when she fled her homeworld 3 years ago. "The water temperature is dropping too quickly," Zara murmured, her violet skin shimmering with the faint bioluminescent patterns that indicated concentration. Her forearms moved in practiced harmony, two adjusting the heating coils while the other two measured out the precise blend of leaves that her grandmother had taught her to prepare. "Vorthak tea is like trust, Marcus. If you let it cool too fast, it becomes bitter and worthless." Marcus smiled, the expression causing the small scar above his left eyebrow to crinkle. He had earned that scar defending a Terran colony from raiders, back before he met Zara, and learned that not all aliens were enemies. Maybe that is why I can never get it right. Humans are not known for our patience with hot drinks. We just want our coffee fast and strong. The proximity alarms continued their urgent wailing, but neither of them moved to answer immediately. They had learned to steal these small moments of peace wherever they could find them. Their trading post on the edge of the neutral zone saw its share of desperate ships and dangerous cargo, but the afternoon tea ritual had become sacred to them, a daily reminder that love could create new traditions from the blending of two very different cultures. It was Marcus who finally sighed and moved toward the control panel, his heavy boots echoing on the metal deck plating. Kepler Station had been a decommissioned mining platform when they purchased it, and despite 3 years of improvements, it still felt more like an industrial facility than a home. But it was theirs, bought with the credits Zara had earned selling her share of the family shipping business before her exile became official. "Incoming vessel on approach Vector 7, Marcus called out, his fingers dancing across the holographic displays that showed the surrounding space. "It is wait. Zara, you need to see this." The tone in his voice made her stomach clench with familiar dread. She set down her teacup with trembling hands and joined him at the communications console, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. The ship approaching their station was sleek and predatory, its hull bearing the distinctive geometric patterns that marked it as a Vorthak diplomatic vessel. But this was not just any diplomatic ship. The gold inlays along its weapon ports and the ceremonial banners streaming from its sensor arrays marked it as belonging to House Kethvar itself. "Your family," Marcus said quietly, and it was not a question. Zara's bioluminescent patterns flickered erratically as emotions she had worked hard to suppress rose to the surface. The last time she had seen a ship bearing her family colors, she had been running for her life with Marcus beside her, carrying nothing but a few personal belongings and the hope that love would be enough to sustain them in exile. Her father, Lord Commander Thane Kethvar, had made it clear that choosing a human over her betrothed would be considered an act of treason against both their house and the Vorthak Empire itself. They should not be here, she whispered, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that indicated deep distress. The exile agreement was clear. They cannot pursue me into neutral space. But, even as she said it, she knew that something had changed. The Vorthak respected contracts and agreements above almost everything else. It was the foundation of their massive trading empire that spanned dozens of star systems. For them to violate the terms of her exile meant that something far more important than family honor was at stake. The communication console chimed with an incoming transmission, and Zara found herself staring at the face of her younger sister, Kira. 3 years had changed the girl from an awkward adolescent into a poised young woman, her violet skin marked with the silver tattoos that indicated she had completed her advanced education and was now considered an adult by Vorthak law. But her eyes that had once sparkled with mischief and admiration for her older sister, now carried a weight of responsibility that made Zara's heart ache. "Sister," Kira said, her voice formal and carefully controlled, "I greet you in the name of House Kethvar and request permission to board your station." "Kira," Zara felt tears gathering in her large, dark eyes. "You have grown so much. But you should not be here." The exile is voided," Kira interrupted, and now her composure cracked slightly, revealing the pain underneath. "Father is dead, Zara. He died defending the outer colonies from human raiders 3 months ago." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her forearms instinctively reaching for support as Marcus stepped forward to steady her. Her father had been many things: proud, stubborn, traditional to a fault, but he had also been a good leader who genuinely cared about protecting Vorthak citizens from harm. The irony that he had died fighting humans while his daughter lived in exile with one was not lost on her. "I am sorry," Marcus said quietly, speaking directly to the communication screen. "Your father was an honorable leader, even if we disagreed about some things." Kira's eyes flicked to the human, and, for a moment, her carefully controlled expression showed open curiosity. She had never actually met Marcus, only heard the stories that painted him as either a seductive villain who had stolen away her sister or a dangerous terrorist who had corrupted a daughter of one of the great houses. Seeing him now, an ordinary man with grease under his fingernails and genuine concern in his eyes, clearly challenged whatever preconceptions she had carried. "Thank you for your words," Kira said formally. "But I am not here to discuss the past. I am here because the Vorthak Council of Houses has voted, and the situation has become complicated." "What situation?" Zara found her voice again, though it sounded hollow to her own ears. "Your betrothal contract with Lord Zentar of House Voss was never formally dissolved," Kira explained, and now her composure began to crack further. "When Father died, his death activated several contingency clauses that we did not know existed. Lord Zentar has declared that your marriage debt must be fulfilled, either by you returning to honor the contract, or by the next eligible daughter of House Kethvar taking your place." The implications hit Zara immediately. As the eldest daughter, she had been betrothed to Lord Zentar to cement an alliance between two of the most powerful Vorthak trading houses. When she fled with Marcus, everyone had assumed the contract was void. But Vorthak contracts were notoriously complex documents, often containing clauses and subclauses that only became relevant under specific circumstances. "They want you to take my place," Zara said, her voice barely a whisper. "The vote was close," Kira admitted. "But enough of the council houses believe that the alliance with House Voss is crucial for defending against the increasing human expansion into our territory. They see your choice as evidence that humans cannot be trusted, that they seduce our people and turn them away from their duties." Marcus stepped forward, his jaw set in a hard line. "And what do you believe?" Kira studied him for a long moment, taking in his worn work clothes and the way he unconsciously moved to place himself partially between Zara and the communication screen, not as a threat, but as a shield. "I believe," she said slowly, "that 3 years ago, my sister was the happiest I had ever seen her when she chose to leave with you. And I believe that Lord Zentar is a cruel man who sees marriage as another form of business acquisition. Then, refuse, Zara said desperately. You are an adult now. You can make your own choices. I am also the only thing standing between House Kethvar and complete political isolation, Kira replied sadly. Without the alliance with House Voss, we will lose our trading rights in the core worlds. Thousands of our people will lose their livelihoods. And, more immediately, we will lose the military protection that has kept the outer colonies safe from raiders. She paused, and, when she continued, her voice carried a weight of exhaustion that made her seem far older than her years. Unless, of course, the original contract is honored by the original signatory. The silence that followed stretched between them across the void of space, filled with the weight of impossible choices and old promises. Zara felt Marcus's hand find hers, his fingers intertwining with her primary pair of hands in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. But she could also feel the pull of duty and family loyalty that had been drilled into her since childhood. How long do we have? She asked finally. Lord Zentar has given us 1 standard month to produce a bride, Kira said. His patience, he says, has limits, and he has already been waiting 3 years for satisfaction of the contract. And if we refuse? Then, House Voss will consider the insult grounds for formal vendetta. They have the backing of 6 other major houses, and the military strength to enforce their displeasure. Kira's bioluminescent patterns flickered with barely suppressed fear. Zara, they could destroy us completely. Not just economically, but physically. There are precedents. Marcus squeezed Zara's hands gently. Could we buy more time? Negotiate some kind of alternative arrangement. Kira shook her head. I have already tried everything I could think of. Lord Zentar has become obsessed with this marriage, convinced that it will cement his position as the most powerful house in the empire. He sees it as the ultimate political coup, forcing the daughter who defied him to return in submission. He wants me broken, Zara said, understanding flooding through her. This is not about the alliance anymore. This is about proving that humans cannot protect what they steal from us. I fear so, Kira agreed. And sister, there is more. The raiders that killed father were not random pirates. Our intelligence networks have traced them back to a human supremacist group that calls itself the Iron Fist. They have been specifically targeting Vorthack settlements and shipping, trying to drive us out of systems where humans want to expand. The revelation sent a chill down Zara's spine. She had known that not all humans approved of interspecies relationships, but the idea that some were actively working to prevent cooperation between their peoples was terrifying. If Lord Zentar could point to organized human aggression as justification for his actions, it would be much harder to argue for peaceful coexistence. Does he know about the Iron Fist connection? Marcus asked, his tactical mind already working through the implications. He knows, and he is using it to argue that all humans are inherently untrustworthy, Kira confirmed. Your relationship with Zara, he claims, is just another form of infiltration, a way to weaken Vorthack resolve from within. That is not true, Zara said fiercely. But, even as she spoke the words, she could see how a skilled politician like Lord Zentar could twist the narrative to his advantage. I know it is not true, Kira said gently. But truth and political necessity do not always align. And, right now, the political necessity is for someone from our house to marry Lord Zentar, or for our house to face destruction. The weight of the choice settled over them like a suffocating blanket. Zara had thought that the hardest decision of her life had been choosing to leave her family and her people for love. But this was worse. This was choosing between the man who had become her entire world and the family who had shaped her into the person capable of making that choice in the first place. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, Kira replied. But, Zara, please do not take too long. Every day we delay gives Lord Zentar more time to build support for his position. And the longer this drags out, the more likely it becomes that he will find other ways to punish our family for the embarrassment you caused him. The communication ended, leaving Zara and Marcus alone with their tea growing cold, and their peaceful life suddenly balanced on the edge of a blade. Outside the viewport, the Vorthack ship hung in space like a beautiful predator, its hull gleaming with the reflected light of the distant star that gave Kepler Station its name. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked softly. Zara turned to look at him, memorizing the way the light caught the silver threads in his dark hair and the determined set of his shoulders. This man had given up his own career with the Terran Engineering Corps to follow her into exile, never once complaining about the sacrifice or suggesting that she should have chosen differently. "I am thinking," she said slowly, "that 3 years ago I was naive enough to believe that love could conquer everything. But love cannot stop wars, Marcus. And love cannot protect the innocent from the consequences of our choices. So what do we do?" She was quiet for a long time, watching the distant stars and thinking about the weight of duty that she had carried her entire life. Finally, she spoke again, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her hearts. "We find a third option. Because if there is one thing humans have taught me, it is that sometimes the best solution is the one nobody expects." But even as she said it, she could not shake the feeling that this time, the odds were stacked too heavily against them, and that some sacrifices were inevitable no matter how clever their plans might be. 3 days after Kira's arrival, Kepler Station had transformed from a quiet trading post into an impromptu diplomatic center. Zara watched from the observation deck as her sister's ship docked with practiced precision, its diplomatic seals glinting in the artificial lighting. The sight brought back memories of her childhood, when such vessels had been as common as cargo haulers in the private docks of House Kethvar's primary estate. Marcus found her there an hour later, carrying 2 cups of coffee that had become their compromise when the formal tea ceremonies proved too emotionally charged to continue. His face carried the exhausted look of someone who had spent the night researching legal precedents and interstellar contract law, searching for loopholes that might not exist. "Any luck with the Terran embassy?" Zara asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. The bitter taste was nothing like the complex flavors of Vorthack tea, but it had become a symbol of their blended life, simple, practical, and somehow comforting in its lack of ceremony. "They are sympathetic but limited in what they can do," Marcus replied, settling beside her on the narrow bench that faced the main viewport. "Officially, this is an internal Vorthack matter involving contract disputes between noble houses. The Terran government cannot interfere without risking a major diplomatic incident. Unofficially, Ambassador Rodriguez thinks we are screwed." Marcus's attempt at humor fell flat, and he sighed deeply. "But she did give me some information that might be useful. The Iron Fist group that killed your father, they are not just random terrorists. Intelligence suggests they are being funded by certain Terran corporate interests who want to disrupt alien trade relationships." Zara felt her bioluminescent patterns dim with disappointment. "So Lord Zentar is right about human treachery?" "No," Marcus said firmly, taking her secondary hands in both of his. "He is right that some humans are working against peaceful coexistence. But that does not make all humans untrustworthy any more than Lord Zentar's behavior makes all Vorthack cruel and manipulative." The distinction felt important, but Zara wondered if it would matter to the Council of Houses when they made their final decision. Politics had a way of reducing complex truths into simple narratives, and the narrative that humans were a threat to Vorthack stability was gaining momentum with each passing day. A soft chime announced Kira's arrival at the observation deck, and Zara turned to see her sister floating gracefully through the doorway in the low-gravity environment they had maintained for her comfort. The younger Vorthack had spent the past few days exploring the station and learning about the life her sister had built in exile, and Zara could see the conflict in her eyes as she tried to reconcile her family's teachings with the reality she was observing. "I have been thinking about our situation," Kira said without preamble, settling into a floating meditation pose that their mother had taught them both as children. "And I believe there might be an approach we have not yet considered." "I am listening," Zara replied, though experience had taught her to be cautious about solutions that seemed too convenient. "The marriage contract with Lord Zentar contains several specific clauses about the nature of the alliance it is meant to create," Kira explained, her voice taking on the precise tone she used when discussing complex business negotiations. "The primary purpose is to combine the trading networks of House Kethvar and House Voss in order to create a unified front against external threats." Marcus leaned forward with interest. What kind of external threats? Originally, the contract was written during the border wars 20 years ago, when the hegemony was trying to expand into Vortex space. The alliance was meant to pool military and economic resources for mutual defense. Kira's bioluminescent patterns brightened as she warmed to her subject. But the specific language talks about threats to the prosperity and security of both house territories and the people who depend on them for protection. The Iron Fist attacks, Zara said, understanding beginning to dawn. They qualify as exactly the kind of threat the contract was meant to address. Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Kira activated a holographic display from her personal data pad, showing a complex legal document covered in dense text and formal seals. The contract allows for modifications to the terms if both parties can demonstrate that alternative arrangements would better serve the alliance's original purpose. Marcus studied the hologram with the focused attention he usually reserved for engineering problems. What kind of alternative arrangements? Marriage is just one way to create a formal alliance between houses, Kira explained. There are precedents for military alliances, economic partnerships, adoption contracts, and even something called a shared venture covenant that essentially makes two houses into a single legal entity for specific purposes. Zara felt a flutter of hope, but years of dealing with Vortex politics had taught her to look for the catch. What would Lord Zentar get out of an alternative arrangement? He wants the prestige of marrying in a house Kethvar, not just a business partnership. That is the challenge, Kira admitted. He would need to believe that the alternative offered him something more valuable than a marriage alliance. Something that would enhance his political position even more than forcing you to return in submission. Like what? Kira's expression became thoughtful. What if we could offer him something that no other house could provide? Something that would make him the most powerful leader in the empire. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Such as the location of the Iron Fist base of operations. The suggestion hung in the air between them like an explosive waiting to detonate. Zara felt her hearts racing as the implications began to unfold in her mind. The Iron Fist had been responsible for dozens of attacks on Vortex shipping and settlements over the past year, but they had proven frustratingly elusive. Finding and destroying their operations would be a major victory for any house leader brave enough to attempt it. Do we even know where their base is? Marcus asked carefully. Not yet, Kira admitted. But I have been analyzing the pattern of their attacks, and I believe I can narrow down the possible locations significantly. More importantly, I think there might be a way to draw them into the open. How? Kira looked directly at Zara, her expression serious. By giving them a target they cannot resist. The daughter of a major Vortex house, traveling with minimal escort through a sector where they have been active. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately, his voice carrying the flat finality of someone who would not be moved on the subject. I will not let you use yourself as bait for terrorists. It would not just be me, Zara said quietly, her tactical mind already working through the possibilities. It would be both of us. A Vortex noble and her human husband, traveling together in apparent vulnerability. To the Iron Fist, we would represent everything they claim to oppose. Even more reason why this is a terrible idea, Marcus replied. These people killed your father, Zara. They are not going to capture us for interrogation. They are going to kill us and broadcast it as a propaganda victory. Not if we are prepared for them, Kira interjected. And not if we have help. She activated another holographic display, this one showing star charts and tactical assessments. I have been in contact with certain elements within House Voss, people who are not entirely comfortable with Lord Zentar's increasingly aggressive policies. If we could provide them with actionable intelligence about the Iron Fist, they might be willing to support an alternative to the marriage contract. You mean stage a coup? Marcus said bluntly. I mean provide evidence that Lord Zentar's obsession with personal grudges is interfering with his ability to protect Vortex interests, Kira corrected. If we could show that he turned down the chance to eliminate the Iron Fist because he was more interested in forcing an unwilling marriage, it would seriously damage his political position. Zara found herself caught between admiration for her sister's strategic thinking and concern about the risks involved. The plan had the elegant complexity that Vortex politics demanded, but it also required them to place themselves in mortal danger based on assumptions about how their enemies would behave. There is another problem, she said slowly. Even if we could locate the Iron Fist and provide that information to House Voss dissidents, what guarantee do we have that they would honor any alternative arrangement? Lord Zentar could simply claim that we were in league with human terrorists from the beginning. Unless we could prove otherwise, Marcus said, his expression shifting as he began to follow the logic of the plan. If we actually participated in the attack that destroyed the Iron Fist base, if Vorthack forces witnessed us fighting alongside them against human enemies, it would be very difficult to argue that we were secretly working with the people we helped destroy, Kira finished. And it would demonstrate that humans and Vorthack can work together effectively against common threats. The three of them sat in silence for several minutes, each absorbed in considering the implications of what they were discussing. Outside the viewport, the stars wheeled slowly in their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas being played out by the creatures who traveled between them. Finally, Zara spoke again. How would we contact these House Voss dissidents without alerting Lord Zentar to our plans? I have a cousin who married into a minor branch of House Voss 5 years ago, Kira replied. She has been sending coded messages expressing concern about the current political situation. I believe she could serve as an intermediary. And how do we locate the Iron Fist base? That is where Marcus comes in, Kira said, turning to the human with an expression that was carefully neutral. The attacks have been too well coordinated to be random. Someone is providing the Iron Fist with detailed intelligence about Vorthack shipping schedules and patrol routes. Someone with access to high-level information. Marcus felt a cold understanding settle in his stomach. You think there is a Terran government official involved? I think there is someone in the Terran bureaucracy who is either being bribed or blackmailed into cooperation, Kira corrected. The question is whether you still have enough contacts within the engineering corps to help us identify who that might be. The request put Marcus in an impossible position. His former colleagues in the corps had maintained friendly relations with him despite his exile, but what Kira was asking would require him to essentially spy on his own people. If he was caught, it would not only destroy those relationships, but could also be considered an act of treason against the Terran government. I could reach out to a few people, he said carefully. Ask some general questions about shipping security and patrol scheduling. But I cannot guarantee they will tell me anything useful, and I certainly cannot ask directly about potential leaks without raising suspicions. It might be enough, Zara said. If we can identify even a few suspects, we might be able to set up a situation where we feed different information to different people and see which version reaches the Iron Fist. A canary trap, Marcus nodded, familiar with the intelligence technique. But that would require us to actually be in a position where Iron Fist operatives might receive the information, which brings us back to the original problem of using ourselves as bait. Perhaps that is not as dangerous as it seems, Kira suggested. If we know they are coming, and we have Vorthack military support standing by, we could control the engagement rather than simply hoping to survive it. Zara found herself thinking about her father, who had built his reputation on carefully calculated risks that others considered impossible. He had always taught her that the difference between bravery and foolishness was not the willingness to face danger, but the preparation and intelligence that made success achievable. We would need more than just House Voss support, she said finally. If this goes wrong, we could trigger the very war that the marriage contract is meant to prevent. We would need assurance from the highest levels of the Vorthack government that they would recognize any alternative arrangement we manage to negotiate. I can try to arrange that, Kira said, but it will require convincing the Council of Houses that our plan has a reasonable chance of success. They will not risk their political positions on a desperate gamble. Then, we need to make it more than a gamble, Marcus said. We need to make it a certainty. And that means we need better intelligence about Iron Fist operations than we currently have. He stood and moved to the communication console, his fingers dancing across the controls as he composed a carefully worded message to his former commanding officer in the engineering corps. The text was innocuous enough, a request for information about upgrading security systems for civilian installations in contested space. But Zara could see the tension in his shoulders as he prepared to send it. This could ruin everything for you, she said softly. If your government discovers that you are investigating them for potential security leaks, they could declare you an enemy agent. They could, Marcus agreed. But if we do nothing, you will either have to return to a marriage that will destroy you, or your sister will have to sacrifice herself instead. Those are not acceptable alternatives. He sent the message and turned back to them with an expression of grim determination. Besides, someone needs to stop the Iron Fist before they kill more innocent people. If that someone happens to be us, then, at least we will be fighting for something that matters. Kira watched this exchange with growing respect for the human who had stolen her sister's heart. She had expected to find either a seductive manipulator or a weak man who had corrupted Zara through emotional dependency. Instead, she was seeing someone who was willing to risk his own freedom to protect people he had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. There is something else we should consider, she said quietly. If we succeed in destroying the Iron Fist and negotiating an alternative alliance, what happens to your life here? You have built something peaceful and private, away from the politics and obligations that destroyed your original relationship. Are you prepared to give that up to become public figures again? It was a question that neither Zara nor Marcus had wanted to confront directly, but it hung over all their planning like a shadow. The life they had built on Kepler Station was small and quiet and entirely their own. Success in their current plan would almost certainly mean returning to a world of formal ceremonies and political obligations, where their relationship would always be scrutinized as a symbol of interspecies cooperation. I do not know, Zara admitted. But I do know that I cannot build happiness on the foundation of my sister's sacrifice. And I cannot let the Iron Fist continue killing people because I was afraid to act. Then, we move forward, Marcus said. We find the leak in the Terran government. We use that information to locate the Iron Fist base. And we present Lord Zentar with an offer he cannot refuse. The chance to be the leader who eliminated the biggest threat to Vortex security in a generation. And if he refuses anyway? Kira asked. Then, we eliminate the Iron Fist ourselves and present the evidence to the Council of Houses as proof that human Vortex cooperation is not only possible, but necessary, Zara replied. Either way, we change the conversation from whether humans can be trusted to whether leaders who refuse to protect their people deserve to remain in power. The plan was ambitious, dangerous, and full of variables they could not control. But, as they sat together watching the stars, Zara felt something she had not experienced since leaving her homeworld 3 years earlier. A sense of purpose that went beyond personal happiness to encompass the broader question of what kind of galaxy they wanted to help create. The peaceful life she and Marcus had built together was precious, but it was also fragile and ultimately selfish if it could only exist by ignoring the suffering of others. Perhaps it was time to discover whether their love was strong enough to survive being tested in service of something larger than themselves. The response from Marcus's former commanding officer arrived 6 days later, hidden within what appeared to be routine technical specifications for shield generators and sensor arrays. Commander Sarah Walsh had always been careful about operational security, but the subtle changes in her usual communication patterns told Marcus everything he needed to know. She was nervous about something, and his inquiry had touched on a sensitive topic. Look at this, Marcus said, highlighting several sections of the technical document as Zara and Kira gathered around the holographic display in their makeshift strategy room. She is recommending upgraded encryption protocols for all civilian installations in the Kepler sector, with special emphasis on facilities that handle shipping manifests and cargo tracking data. Zara studied the highlighted text, her bioluminescent patterns flickering as she processed the implications. She would not recommend those upgrades unless she suspected that current encryption standards have been compromised. Exactly. And look at this part here. She specifically mentions concerns about unauthorized access to logistical databases and suggests implementing compartmentalized information sharing protocols. Marcus pointed to a section of dense technical jargon that would mean nothing to casual readers, but carried significant weight for anyone familiar with military security procedures. Kira floated closer to examine the document. What does compartmentalized information sharing mean in practical terms? It means limiting access to specific types of information based on security clearance levels, Marcus explained. You only tell people what they need to know for their specific job functions. It is a standard response when you suspect that someone with legitimate access is leaking information to unauthorized parties. So she knows there is a leak, but she cannot tell you directly because it would compromise an ongoing investigation, Zara summarized. That is my interpretation. But there is more. Marcus activated another section of the document, revealing detailed specifications for communication protocols. These recommended frequency ranges and encryption keys. They are not random numbers. Sarah is using a code we developed during our training exercises to indicate specific geographical areas. He overlaid a star chart on the technical specifications, and, suddenly, the seemingly random numbers began to form a pattern that pointed toward a specific sector of space near the border between Terran.